The bus smelled like stale cigarettes and someone's forgotten lunch, and I pressed my forehead against a cold glass and watched my childhood disappear through a streaked window. Mark's silver sedan was still parked in the driveway when we pulled away, and I could see the outline of his shoulders through the kitchen blinds, still sitting at the table, still finishing his dinner like he hadn't just erased me from the family portrait. Next stop, Maple and 4th, the driver announced, and I gripped my duffel bag tighter and tried to remember if Sam's apartment was on Maple or Elm. My phone buzzed in my pocket, once, twice, 3 times, and I didn't look at it because I already knew who it was, and I already knew I wasn't going to answer. My mother had a habit of calling after she'd done something unforgivable, as if the sound of her voice could undo the weight of her silence. She'd called 3 times in the last hour, and each time I'd let it ring, watching her name flash across the screen like a warning label I'd finally learned to read. The truth was, I'd been expecting this for months. Not the bus ride, not the duffel bag, not the specific humiliation of being told to leave while my brother chewed his pot roast like it was any other Tuesday, but the rejection itself, the slow and systematic erasure of my place in that house, that I'd seen coming like a storm on a summer horizon, dark and inevitable and completely out of my control. It started small, the way these things always do. Jessica didn't like the way I kept my shampoo in the shower caddy, so I moved it to the edge of the tub. She didn't like the way my work boots smelled in the mudroom, so I started leaving them on the back porch. She didn't like the way I watched TV in the living room when she and Mark were trying to have quality time, so I started watching in my room on a cracked laptop screen that I'd bought with my own money from my own job that I'd worked since I was 16 years old. And every time I gave something up, my mother would pat my hand and say, "That's so sweet of you, Charlotte. Jessica is just trying to feel at home here." And I would nod and swallow whatever words were forming in my throat and go back to my shrinking corner of the house, believing that if I was just accommodating enough, just flexible enough, just invisible enough, I'd eventually earn my keep. But I was wronged. The bus lurched to a stop, and I stood up, pulling my duffel bag over my shoulder and stepping into the aisle. A man in a stained jacket was asleep in the back row, his mouth open and his head tilted at an angle that looked painful. I wondered if he had somewhere to go, if someone was waiting for him, if he'd been kicked out too, or if he'd just wandered until he found a seat that felt like home. The city was gray and wet, the kind of evening that makes everything look exhausted. I walked 3 blocks to Sam's building, a brick walk-up with a buzzer that had been broken since I'd first visited her 2 years ago. I let myself in through the side door like I'd done 100 times before, and I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, and I knocked on her door with the kind of knock that said I needed help even though I hadn't said the words out loud yet. Sam opened the door in her hospital scrubs, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her face shifting from confusion to concern in the span of a single second. "Charlie, what's wrong?" "I got kicked out," I said, and my voice came out flat and hollow, like someone else was speaking through me. "My parents chose Mark." She pulled me inside without another word, closed the door, and wrapped her arms around me so tight I could feel her heartbeat through her chest. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears were there, pressing behind my eyes like a headache I couldn't shake, but they wouldn't come. I'd spent too many months holding them back, and now my body had forgotten how to let them go. "Tell me everything," she said, leading me to her futon and sitting me down like I was a child who'd scraped her knee. Her cat Machi jumped into my lap and started purring, and I scratched behind her ears and tried to figure out where to start. "There's not much to tell," I said. "Mark gave them an ultimatum. He said if I stayed, he and Jessica would leave. And they picked him." Sam's face went through a complicated series of expressions, each one darker than the last. "That's insane. You're their daughter. You've been there your whole life." "Yeah, well," I said, "I'm the daughter who works at a diner. She's the daughter-in-law who can afford to pay for a wedding. I guess they did the math."
"Fuck the math," Sam said.
"You're worth more than that wedding. You know that, right? You know you didn't deserve this." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel the truth of her words in my bones, to let them soak into the parts of me that had been hollowed out by months of being pushed aside. But all I could think about was my mother handing me that sandwich, the way she'd said, "Keep your phone on," like she was checking off a box on a to-do list. She'd done what she had to do to feel okay about herself, and then she'd closed the door and gone back to her life without me. "Your parents are assholes," Sam said, and she said it with so much conviction that I almost laughed. "You know what? You're going to be fine. You're going to be better than fine. You're going to be amazing, and they're going to regret this for the rest of their lives." "Maybe," I said. "But right now I just need a place to crash. Just for a few days, until I figure out what to do next." "Stay as long as you need," she said. "You know that. You don't even have to ask." And that was it. That was the moment I realized that Sam was more family to me than my actual family had ever been. She didn't have to take me in.
She didn't owe me anything.
But she did it anyway, without hesitation, without conditions, without making me feel like I was a burden. That night, I lay on her futon with Machi curled up at my feet and stared at the ceiling and replayed everything that had led me here. The safe. My grandmother's words. The money I'd never touched because I'd convinced myself it wasn't really mine, but sitting there in the dark, with my family's rejection still fresh on my skin, I realized that I couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. I couldn't afford to pretend I was someone who didn't matter. I'd done that for years, and it had gotten me exactly nowhere. The next morning, I called my grandmother's executor. His name was Mr. Patterson, a retired attorney who'd handled her affairs for decades. He sounded surprised to hear from me, but not displeased. "Charlotte," he said, "I was wondering when you'd call. Your grandmother always said you would, when the time was right." "I need to know about the safe," I said. "I need to know what's in it. And I need to know if it's really mine." Mr. Patterson was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle. "Your grandmother set everything up before she died. The contents of that safe were designated for you specifically, with a trust that matured on your 18th birthday. You've had legal ownership for 2 years now. The only reason you haven't accessed it is because you haven't tried." "Why didn't she tell anyone?" I asked. "Why didn't she tell my parents?" "Your grandmother had her reasons," he said. "She watched how they treated you. She saw the favoritism, the neglect, the way they poured everything into your brother, and left you to fend for yourself. She wanted to make sure you had something of your own. Something they couldn't take away." I felt my throat tighten. "How much is it?" "Enough," he said. "More than enough. I'd recommend coming to my office tomorrow so we can go over the details. But I can tell you this much. Your grandmother's estate was significant. She invested well. She saved carefully. And she wanted you to have every penny of it." I hung up the phone and sat on Sam's kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and tried to process what I'd just heard. My grandmother had been rich. Rich enough to change everything. And she'd left it all to me. The grandchild who'd been cast aside. The grandchild who'd spent her whole life being told she wasn't enough. I thought about my mother's face when she'd handed me that sandwich. I thought about Mark's smirk as he'd watched me walk out the door. I thought about Jessica redecorating my room like I was already dead and gone. They didn't know. None of them knew. They'd thrown me away without realizing what they were throwing away. And now, 2 years later, I was finally ready to do something about it. I was finally ready to show them exactly what they'd lost, but first, I needed to go back to the house. My grandmother's house. The one that had been sitting empty for years. The one that my parents had ignored because they didn't have the money to fix it up. The one that held the safe that was holding my future. I borrowed Sam's car and drove out of the city on a Saturday morning. The sun was bright, and the sky was clear, and I felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Small, modest, a little rundown around the edges, with peeling paint and a front porch that had seen better decades. But it was solid. It was sturdy. And it was mine. Did I let myself in with the key I'd kept on my keychain for 5 years? The air was still and dusty, filled with the ghosts of a childhood I'd spent in these rooms. I walked through the living room and remembered playing cards with my grandmother on the floor, her laugh filling the space with warmth. I walked through the kitchen and remembered helping her bake pies, the flour dusting our clothes, the smell of sugar and butter and love. And then I walked to the back bedroom and knelt down in front of the closet where I'd found the safe all those years ago. It was still there. Still closed. Still waiting for me. I spun the dial, feeling the tumblers click into place one by one. The numbers came back to me like a song I'd once known, muscle memory guiding my fingers. And when the door swung open, I saw what I'd seen before and still couldn't quite believe: bonds,
Stocks. Deeds.
a letter, and a photograph of my grandmother, young and vibrant, standing in front of the same house that was now mine. I pulled out the letter and unfolded it carefully. My grandmother's handwriting was spidery but clear, the words she'd written years ago still sharp on the page. "Charlotte, my darling, if you're reading this, then I've been gone for a while, and you've finally found the courage to look. I'm sorry it took so long. I know how hard it is to believe that anyone could love you the way you deserve to be loved. I know because I felt the same way when I was young. My parents favored my brother. They gave him everything while I scraped and saved and made my own way. I swore I'd never let anyone treat me like that again, and I swore I'd never let anyone treat you that way either. This money is yours. This house is yours. I'm giving them to you because you deserve them and because I love you. Not because of anything you've done or haven't done, but because you're you. Because you're strong and kind and brave. Even when you don't feel like you are, don't let them break you, Charlotte. Don't let anyone break you. You're made of stronger stuff than they'll ever understand." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. And then I looked at the photograph again, at my grandmother's smile, and I knew what I had to do. I had to be strong. I had to be brave. I had to show the people who'd throw me away that they'd made the biggest mistake of their lives, but more than that, I had to build something for myself. Something that was mine, and mine alone. Something that proved that I was worth more than the family who'd rejected me. I spent the rest of that day in the house, cleaning and planning. I made a list of everything that needed to be done, every repair and renovation and improvement that would bring this place back to life. I called contractors. I made appointments. I started spending money for the first time in my life because now I had it and now I knew what I wanted to do with it. And then, when the sun was setting and the house was starting to feel like a home, I made the second call. The call to my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Charlotte, is that you or have you been? We've been so worried." "I'm fine," I said.
I'm more than fine.
"I'm coming to visit tomorrow. There's something I need to show you." "Show me what, Charlotte, please. Just come home."
We can talk about this.
"We can figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out," I said. "I just need you to see something. And then you can decide what you want to do." I hung up before she could respond, before I could hear the guilt in her voice and let it soften me.
I was done being soft.
I was done being the one who gave ground and asked for nothing in return. Tomorrow, I would show her what she'd thrown away. Tomorrow, I would change everything. That I drove back to Sam's apartment with my grandmother's letter folded in my pocket and the feeling of a future that had finally started to take shape. The lights of the city blinked in the distance, and I thought about all the nights I'd spent wondering if I'd ever be something, ever be someone, ever be worth anything at all. I still didn't have all the answers. I still didn't know how this was going to end, but for the first time in my life, I knew that I was going to be okay, and that was enough to start it. I pulled up to my parents' house at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I sat in Sam's car for a full 5 minutes before I got out. The engine ticked as it cooled, and I watched the familiar roofline, the familiar windows, the familiar front door that had closed behind me 6 weeks ago and taken my entire childhood with it. The house hadn't changed. The hydrangeas Mrs. Patterson had been watering the night I left were still there, bigger now, spilling over the edge of their bed in a cascade of blue and purple. The mailbox was still slightly crooked from the time Mark backed into it with his first car. The welcome mat still said, "Home Sweet Home," in faded letters that had been bleached by too many seasons in the sun. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. And everything had changed that I got out of the car and walked up the driveway. My heels clicked on the concrete in a rhythm that felt foreign and purposeful. I'd worn my best clothes today, a blazer I'd bought from a thrift store and tailored myself, a pair of slacks that made me feel like I belonged in a boardroom instead of a diner. I'd done my hair. I'd put on makeup. I'd made myself look like someone who had her life together, even if I still wasn't entirely sure what that meant. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She'd been waiting, watching from the window, like she always did when she was anxious. Her face was pale and her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked like She hadn't slept in days. "Charlotte," she breathed, and she reached for me like she was going to hug me. I stepped back, just slightly, just enough to make her hesitate. "Can we sit down?" I asked. "I have some things to tell you." She nodded and stepped aside, and I walked into the house that had stopped being my home months ago. The living room was the same. The couch was the same. My dad was sitting in his usual chair with his hands on his knees, and when he saw me, his face did something complicated. Relief and guilt and fear all twisted together.
"Charlotte," he said.
"We're glad you're okay." "I'm more than okay," I said. "I'm actually doing quite well." My mother sat down on the couch and gestured for me to sit too. I didn't. I stood in the center of the room, in the spot where I'd stood 1,000 times before, and I looked at the two people who had raised me and then discarded me like I was an inconvenience they'd finally gotten rid of. "Where's Mark?" I asked. "He's at church," my mother said. "With Jessica. They'll be back around noon." "Good," I said. "I want him to hear this too. But I can start with you." I pulled an envelope out of my bag. It was thick, stuffed with documents and papers and copies of things my grandmother had left behind. I handed it to my mother and watched her open it with trembling hands. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it," I said. "Read it." She pulled out the first document. It was a copy of my grandmother's will. She read the first line, and her face went pale. "Grandma left you money." "She left me everything," I said. "The house. The investments. All of it. It's all mine." My dad stood up from his chair. "That's not possible. Your grandmother didn't have money. We went through her affairs after she died. There was nothing." "There was a safe," I said. "A safe she hid in her closet. She told me about it before she died. She gave me the combination. She left everything to me and set up a trust that matured when I turned 18. My mother's hands were shaking. She dropped the envelope and papers scattered across the coffee table like confetti. "Charlotte, why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "Why didn't you say something? We could have used that money. We could have paid for things." "You used it anyway," I said. "I gave you a check. Remember that check you used for Mark's wedding? It was funded with my grandmother's money. My money. Money you'd have had all along if you'd treated me like I mattered." "That's not fair," my dad said. "You can't hold that over us. We didn't know." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't know. Because none of you ever asked. None of you ever cared enough to find out what I had, what I was, what I could do. You just saw me as the problem, the one who got in the way, the one who wasn't worth keeping around." My mother was crying now, and I felt a familiar ache in my chest. I'd spent my whole life trying to make her proud, trying to earn her love, trying to be enough. And now here she was, crying because I'd finally stopped trying. "We made a mistake," she said. "We made a terrible mistake. We should never have listened to Mark. We should never have let Jessica push you out. We were wrong, Charlotte. We were so wrong." "Wrong," I repeated. "That's the word you're using."
"Wrong."
"You threw me out of my own home. You let Mark threaten to leave if you kept me. You watched me walk out the door with a duffel bag and a bus pass, and you didn't stop me. And all you can say is that you were wrong." "What do you want us to say?" my dad asked. "We're sorry. We're telling you we're sorry." "What else can we do?" I looked at him. I looked at both of them. And I realized that they didn't get it. They didn't understand that an apology wasn't enough. They'd broken something inside me, something that couldn't be fixed with words. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "I'm here to tell you what's going to happen next." My mother looked up, her eyes wet and hopeful. "What do you mean I'm keeping the house?" I said. "Grandma's house. I'm renovating it and moving in. It's already mine legally, and I'm going to live there." "That's wonderful," my mother said. "We can help you. We can come over and—" "No," I said. "You're not coming over. You're not helping. You're not part of this." The words landed like a slap. My mother recoiled like I'd hit her. "Charlotte, please. I'm not done," I said. "I have more money than I know what to do with. I have enough to live on for years. I have enough to go back to school. I have enough to start a business. I have enough to do whatever I want with my life. And I'm going to do all of it without you." My dad stepped forward. "You're saying you want nothing to do with us." "I'm saying," I said, that I don't need you. I haven't needed you for a long time. I needed you 6 weeks ago, when Mark gave you that ultimatum. I needed you to stand up for me, to tell him that I was your daughter, and I deserve to be treated with respect. But you didn't. You chose him. And that choice has consequences. My mother stood up. Her face was blotchy and red, and her voice was pleading in a way I'd never heard before. We can make this right. We can tell Mark and Jessica to leave. We can have you back. Just tell us what to do, Charlotte. Please. I don't want to come back, I said. I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to be in a house where I'm treated like a guest in my own home. I don't want to be somewhere that I have to earn the right to exist. I have my own house now, my own money, my own life, and I'm going to live it. Charlotte, you're being cruel, my dad said. We're your parents. You can't just walk away from us. Watch me, I said, and that's when the front door opened. Mark walked in with Jessica on his arm, still wearing their church clothes, his face bright and casual like he didn't have a care in the world. Jessica was laughing at something he'd said, her perfect teeth and perfect hair and perfect everything. And when she saw me, her smile faltered.
Charlotte, she said.
You're here. I'm leaving, I said. I just came to say my piece. Mark's face shifted from surprise to something harder. What are you doing here? Mom said you'd been gone for weeks. We figured you'd moved on. I moved on, I said. I moved into Grandma's house. Did you know she left it to me, the whole thing? Plus enough money to do whatever I want with my life. Mark's eyes narrowed. Grandma didn't have money.
She did, I said. She just didn't tell you.
She didn't tell anyone. She left everything to me because she saw how you treated me. She saw what I was dealing with, and she wanted to make sure I had something of my own. Mark laughed, but it was a hollow sound, forced and brittle. That's ridiculous. Grandma didn't have a pot to piss in. You're lying. I'm not lying, I said. I have the documents. I have the proof. I've already accessed the accounts. The money is mine, Mark. And you can't touch any of it. Jessica stepped forward, her eyes wide. Wait, hold on. Are you saying you're actually rich, like rich? I'm saying, I said, that I have enough to live the rest of my life without ever worrying about money again. I can do whatever I want, buy whatever I want, go wherever I want. And I'm going to do it all without any of you. Mark's face went red. You're doing this to punish us, aren't you? You're rubbing it in because you're bitter about what happened. I'm telling you the truth, I said. That's not punishment. That's just honesty. Something none of you ever gave me. Charlotte, come on, Mark said. This is ridiculous. We're family. We're supposed to take care of each other. Like you took care of me, I asked. Like when you told Mom and Dad to kick me out because I was cramping your style, like when you let Jessica redecorate my room and throw away my stuff. That's your idea of taking care of family. Jessica was just trying to make the house nicer, Mark said. She didn't mean anything by it. She broke my computer, I said. She threw away my books. She moved my bed into a corner, like I was furniture that could be rearranged. And you watched it happen. You watched all of it happen, and you didn't say a single word. Mark opened his mouth to respond, but Jessica cut him off. Look, Charlotte, I didn't mean to cause any problems. I was just trying to make the house feel more like a home for Mark and me. I didn't realize you were so attached to your stuff. I laughed. I actually laughed, the sound sharp and bitter and completely unexpected. You didn't realize I was attached to my stuff. That stuff was mine. My books. My computer. My room. It was all I had, and you took it away piece by piece. And now you're standing here telling me you didn't realize. Okay, Mark said, raising his hands like he was trying to calm a wild animal. This is getting out of hand. Everyone just take a breath. No, I said. I've taken enough breaths. I've spent my whole life trying to be small and quiet and accommodating, and look where it got me. Thrown out like trash because you wanted a nice wedding and a perfect little life with your perfect little wife. Now, hold on, my dad said. That's enough. I'm not done, I said. I'm going to say this once, and then I'm leaving. I have a life now. A good life. A life I built for myself without any of your help. I have a house. I have money. I have a partner who loves me and treats me with respect. And I have something none of you will ever have. Peace. I'm at peace with this. I'm at peace with walking away. Charlotte, please, my mother said. Don't do this. We can work this out. We can find a way to...
There's no way, I said.
You made your choice. You chose Mark. You chose Jessica. You chose a wedding and a future with them, and you pushed me out in the process. And I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. I walked to the door. I could feel them watching me, could feel the weight of their stares like hands trying to hold me back. But I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. Charlotte, Mark called after me. You can't just walk away from us. We're your family. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned back to look at him. At all of them. You were my family, I said. Now you're just people I used to know. I walked out the door, and I didn't look back. I got in Sam's car, and I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, and I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt light. I felt free. I felt like I'd been carrying a weight my whole life, and I'd finally set it down. The drive back to the city was long and quiet, and I spent it thinking about everything I'd said and everything I'd done. I'd told them the truth. I'd shown them what they'd lost. And I'd walked away with my head held high. When I got back to Sam's apartment, she was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a worried expression. How'd it go? I told them everything, I said. About the money, about the house, about what they did to me. And I walked away. Sam hugged me, her arms tight around my shoulders. You're brave. You know that braver than anyone I've ever met. I don't feel brave, I said. I feel tired. Tired and kind of empty. That's okay, she said. You did the right thing. You set boundaries. You stood up for yourself. That's not easy. I nodded and drank my coffee and tried to feel something other than the strange numbness that had settled over me. I'd expected to feel vindicated. I'd expected to feel powerful. Instead, I just felt like I'd closed a door I could never open again. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the renovation of my grandmother's house. I hired contractors and painters and electricians. I picked out furniture and paint colors and light fixtures. I made decisions and signed checks and watched the house transform from a dusty old relic into something that felt like home. And slowly, the numbness started to fade. It was replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't peace. It was something more like contentment, a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. That I stopped checking my phone for calls from my parents. I stopped wondering if they'd try to reach out, if they'd apologize, if they'd beg me to come back. I stopped caring. And that was the most freeing thing of all. At one night, about a month after I'd moved into the house, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered it out of habit, and I heard Jessica's voice on the other end. Charlotte, please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. What do you want? I asked. I want to apologize, she said. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the way I let things get so out of hand. I was wrong, Charlotte. I was so wrong. I didn't say anything. I just waited, listening to her breathe on the other end of the line. The thing is, she continued, Mark and I are having problems. We're fighting all the time. And part of it, a big part of it, is what happened with you. He can't let it go. He feels guilty, even though he won't say it. And I feel guilty too. We both do. That doesn't change anything. I said, I know, she said. I know it doesn't. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how unfair we were. How cruel. You didn't deserve any of it. Thank you, I said. But it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. I know, she said again. I just wanted you to know. She hung up, and I sat in my grandmother's living room and stared at the phone in my hand. Jessica's apology should have felt like a victory. It didn't. It just felt like another reminder of everything I'd lost. But that was okay. Because what I'd lost wasn't worth keeping anyway. And what I'd gained was worth more than they'd ever understand. And I was free. I was finally free. And nothing they could say or do would ever change that. The call came at 7 in the morning on a Thursday, and I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. But something made me pick up. something cold and certain that coiled in my stomach before I even heard the voice on the other end. Charlotte, it's your mother. I know you don't want to talk to me, but this is important. It's about Mark. I sat up in bed, my heart already racing. What happened? He's been in an accident. A car accident. He's at the hospital, and they don't know if he's going to make it. The words landed like stones in my chest. I wanted to feel something, grief or fear, or even anger, but all I felt was a strange kind of hollow shock that left me numb and breathless. Which hospital? I asked. St. Mary's. Please, Charlotte, I know you're angry with us, but he's your brother. He needs you. I told her I'd be there, and hung up the phone. Sam was still asleep beside me, her hair spread across the pillow like a dark halo. I touched her shoulder, and she stirred, blinked at me with sleepy eyes. What's wrong? She asked. Mark's been in an accident. I have to go to the hospital. She sat up immediately, all traces of sleep gone from her face. Do you want me to come with you? No, I said. I need to do this alone. I dressed quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. I didn't bother with makeup or hair. I just grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital in the gray morning light, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I found my mother in the waiting room, huddled in a plastic chair with her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. My father was beside her, his face gray and lined with exhaustion. When they saw me, my mother stood up and rushed toward me. Charlotte, thank God you came. Is he okay? I asked. What happened? He was on his way home from work, my father said. A truck ran a red light, hit him on the driver's side. They had to cut him out of the car. Where's Jessica? My mother's face twisted. She's in with him. She hasn't left his side since they brought him in. I sat down in the chair next to them and waited. The minutes stretched into hours, each one longer than the last. Nurses came and went. Doctors appeared with updates that were vague and unsettling. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized that I'd been holding my breath for so long my lungs had started to ache. Finally, a doctor came out and told us we could see him. My mother and father went first, and I waited in the hallway while they had their moment. When they came out, my mother was crying, and my father looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. He's conscious, my mother said. He's asking for you. I walked into the room and saw Mark for the first time since I'd left my parents' house. He was lying in a hospital bed, his face bruised and swollen, one arm in a cast and the other hooked up to an 4. Jessica was sitting beside him, her perfect hair disheveled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Hey, I said, standing in the doorway. Mark turned his head toward me, slowly, painfully. His eyes were bloodshot and unfocused, but he recognized me. I could see it in the way his face shifted, the guilt and shame, and something else I couldn't quite name. Charlotte, he said, and his voice was raspy, barely more than a whisper. You came. I came, I said. I don't know why, but I came. I need to tell you something, he said. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I stepped closer, feeling Jessica's eyes on me. What is it? The money, he said. Grandma's money. The trust fund she left you. What about it? He closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought he'd fallen asleep. But then he spoke again, his voice even weaker than before. I knew about it. I knew all along. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I found out when I was cleaning out her office after she died, he said. I found the documents. The trust, the deed, everything. I knew she'd left it all to you. And I was so angry, Charlotte. I was so angry that she'd chosen you over me. I felt my hands start to shake. You knew I had that money, and you still let them kick me out, you still let them choose you. I thought if I could get rid of you, if I could make you leave, then maybe Mom and Dad would change the will or something. I don't know what I was thinking. I was stupid. I was greedy. And I've regretted it every single day. Jessica reached out and took Mark's hand. It's okay, she said. It's okay. No, it's not, Mark said. It's not okay. I ruined our family. I ruined everything. And I can't take it back. I stood there in the hospital room, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the smell of antiseptic, and I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. My brother, the golden child, the one who'd always gotten everything he wanted, had known about my inheritance all along. And he deliberately destroyed my relationship with our parents to keep it for himself. Why now? I asked. Why are you telling me this now? Because I almost died, he said. And when I was lying in that wreckage, I thought about all the things I've done, all the people I've hurt. And I realized that none of it mattered. None of it. The money, the wedding, the house. It was all meaningless. And I threw away the one thing that actually mattered. What was that? I asked. You, he said. I threw away you. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to feel. The anger was there, burning hot and bright, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt a lot like grief. Charlotte, I'm so sorry, he said. I know it doesn't change anything. I know you can't forgive me, but I had to tell you. I had to tell you the truth. I looked at Jessica. She was crying too, silent tears streaming down her face. And I realized that this was real. This wasn't a trick or a manipulation. This was my brother, broken and bruised, trying to make amends for something he couldn't undo. I need some time, I said. I need to think about this. That's fair, Mark said. That's more than I deserve. I walked out of the room and down the hallway to the elevator. I pressed the button and waited, trying to process everything I'd just heard. My brother had betrayed me. He'd known about the money, and he'd used it to destroy me. And now he was lying in a hospital bed, apologizing, and I didn't know what to do with any of it. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. I pressed the button for the ground floor and leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. And that's when I made a decision that I went back to my grandmother's house, and I sat in the living room and I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about the night I'd been kicked out, the bus ride, the sandwich my mother had made me. I thought about Sam and her futon and her kindness. I thought about the safe and the money and the house that was now mine. And I thought about Mark, about the look on his face when he'd told me the truth, about the way Jessica had held his hand, about the fear in my mother's voice when she'd called to tell me he might die. I could hold on to the anger. I could let it fester and grow and poison everything I touched. I could stay in my grandmother's house and build a wall between myself and the family that had hurt me. I could do all of that, or I could try to forgive them, not because they deserved it, not because I was ready, but because holding on to the anger was exhausting, because I was tired of carrying around the weight of what they'd done, because I wanted to be free, and sometimes freedom meant letting go of something you had every right to hold on to. The next day, I went back to the hospital. Mark was awake, sitting up in bed with his broken arm propped on a pillow. Jessica was asleep in a chair beside him, and my mother was in the corner, reading a magazine she wasn't actually looking at. I walked in and sat down in the chair opposite Mark. I've been thinking, I said, about what you told me. Mark looked up, his eyes wary. And I'm not going to forgive you. Not today. Maybe not ever. But I'm going to try to move on. I'm going to try to let go of the anger. And I'm going to start by telling you that I appreciate you being honest with me. It doesn't change what happened, but it's a start. Mark's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he said. Thank you, Charlotte. That means more than you'll ever know. I'm not doing this for you, I said. I'm doing it for me. I'm done being defined by what you did to me. I'm done being angry. I have a life now, a good life, and I'm going to live it. My mother looked up from her magazine. Charlotte, can I talk to you? I nodded and followed her out of the room into the hallway. She stood across from me, her hands clasped in front of her, her face tight with emotion. I'm sorry too, she said. For everything. For not standing up for you. For not seeing what was happening. For failing you as a mother. You did fail me, I said. You let Mark dictate our whole family dynamic. You let Jessica take over my room. You let them push me out. And you didn't say a word. I know, she said. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Regret isn't enough, I said. Regret doesn't change what happened. I know, she said again. But it's all I have to give you. And I wanted you to have it. I looked at my mother, this woman who'd raised me, who'd packed my lunches and helped me with my homework and taught me how to tie my shoes. She'd done so much for me, and she'd also done so much damage. And I realized that both of those things could be true. I'm not going to cut you out of my life, I said. But I'm not going to pretend everything is okay. It's not. And it might never be. But I'm willing to try. For the first time in years, I'm willing to try. My mother's face crumpled and she reached for me, pulling me into a hug that I didn't resist. And for the first time in months, I let myself be held. When I pulled away, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But lighter. I need to go home, I said. I need to be alone for a while. She nodded. I understand.
Thank you, Charlotte,
for giving us another chance. I walked out of the hospital and into the cold afternoon air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I stood in the parking lot, and I breathed in the cold air, and I felt something shift inside me that I was still angry. I was still hurt. I was still processing everything that had happened. But I was also hopeful. Hopeful that maybe, somehow, things could be different. And that hope was worth holding on to. I drove home to my grandmother's house and let myself in. Sam was there, waiting for me with dinner on the table and a worried expression on her face. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, I said. But I think I will be. We ate dinner together, and I told her everything. About the hospital, about Mark's confession, about my mother's apology. And she listened, the way she always did, without judgment or interruption. Are you going to forgive them? She asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe. Eventually. But not yet. I need time. I need space. I need to figure out what I want. That's okay, she said. You have all the time in the world. And she was right. I had time. I had space. I had a life that I'd built for myself, a life I was proud of. And I had the power to decide what came next. That was the most freeing thing of all. The letter came in the mail on a Tuesday, and I almost threw it away with the rest of the junk. But something about the handwriting made me pause. It was my mother's script, loopy and careful, the same handwriting that had filled my school permission slips and birthday cards for 18 years. I opened it standing in my kitchen, the kettle whistling behind me, and I read the words that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Charlotte, I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. It's about your grandmother's money. The money she left you. There are things I haven't been honest about, and I can't carry this secret anymore.
Please call me. Please.
I'll tell you everything, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. The kettle continued to whistle, a high, piercing sound that I didn't register until Sam came into the kitchen and turned it off for me. She looked at my face and didn't ask questions. She just touched my shoulder and waited. I called my mother that evening. She answered on the first ring, her voice thin and trembling in a way I hadn't heard since Mark's accident. Thank you for calling, she said. I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything, but I need to tell you this in person. Can you come to the house tomorrow? I said yes. I didn't know why I said yes. Something in her voice was different, stripped of the usual defensiveness, raw in a way that made me want to listen. I drove to my parents' house the next afternoon with Sam beside me. She'd insisted on coming, and I hadn't argued. I didn't want to do this alone. My mother was waiting on the front porch, which was unusual. She never sat outside. She'd always said the neighbors would gossip if they saw her just sitting there doing nothing. But today she was perched on the edge of the porch swing, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale and drawn. Where's Dad? I asked. Inside, she said. He doesn't know I'm telling you this. I want to do it alone first. Sam sat in the car, giving me space. I walked up to the porch and sat down on the swing next to my mother. The wood creaked beneath us, a familiar sound from my childhood that had always meant comfort. Now it just meant tension. Mom, what's going on? Your letter was really vague. She took a deep breath. Your grandmother's money, the trust. It wasn't supposed to be just yours. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? Your grandmother had 2 separate trusts set up. One for you and one for Mark. But when she died, the one for Mark was never activated. There were conditions attached to it. Conditions that weren't fulfilled.
What
What conditions? Your grandmother was old-fashioned in her own way, my mother said. She believed that money should go to people who would use it responsibly. She set up Mark's trust so that it would only activate if he got married before he turned 30. In a church. To a woman she approved of. Jessica. I said. My mother nodded. Your grandmother didn't approve of Jessica. She never said it out loud, but she told me once that she thought Jessica was entitled, that she didn't have a good work ethic, that she was more interested in appearances than substance. I felt a strange mix of vindication and confusion. So Mark didn't get the money because he married Jessica. He got the money because I transferred it to him, my mother said. I was the executor of the estate. I had access to the accounts. And when I saw that Mark wasn't going to meet the conditions, I moved the money from his trust into yours. I merged them, and I made it so you'd get everything. Wait, I said. You gave me the money, you made sure I got it. I couldn't stand the thought of him getting everything, my mother said. I knew how unfair it was. I knew how much he and Jessica were pushing you out, and I wanted you to have something. Something they couldn't take away. I sat there on the porch swing, the sun warm on my face, and tried to process what I was hearing. My mother, who had let them kick me out, who had handed me a sandwich and told me to keep my phone on, had been the one who made sure I was taken care of. She'd been working behind the scenes the whole time. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I was ashamed, she said. I was ashamed that I couldn't stand up to Mark. I was ashamed that I let Jessica walk all over you. I was ashamed that I was too weak to be the mother you needed. And I was afraid that if I told you what I'd done, you'd still hate me anyway. Mom, I don't hate you. I've never hated you. I've been angry at you. I've been hurt by you. But I've never hated you. She started to cry. I'd seen my mother cry a few times in my life, but never like this. This was the kind of crying that came from deep inside, from a place that had been locked away for too long. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. I don't deserve anything. I failed you in so many ways. But I want you to know that I tried. I tried to make it right. I just didn't know how to tell you. Why didn't you tell Mark? I asked. Why didn't you tell him what you did? Because I knew he'd be furious, she said. I knew he'd try to stop me. And I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let him take everything from you. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold and trembling in mine, and I held onto it like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the ground.
Thank you, I said.
For what you did. I know it wasn't easy. And I know you had to keep it a secret. I did it because I love you, she said. Even when I was failing you, I loved you. And I wanted you to have something of your own. We sat there on the porch for a while, not talking, just holding hands and watching the sun sink lower in the sky. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I understood my mother. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough. How's Mark doing? I asked. He's better, she said. He's out of the hospital now. He's staying with us while he recovers. Jessica's been different.
Softer.
I think the accident changed her. Changed her how? She's been helping around the house. She's been kinder to us. She even asked about you the other day. She said she wanted to make things right. I didn't know what to make of that. Jessica had never been kind to me. She'd always been polite, but there was a coldness underneath that I'd never been able to ignore. Maybe she's changed, I said. Maybe the accidents scare her too. Maybe, my mother said. I just want her family to be whole again. I know that's asking for a lot. I know we've hurt you, but I want to try. If you're willing. I thought about it. I thought about everything that had happened, everything that had been said and done. And I realized that I had a choice. I could keep holding on to the anger, keep building walls, keep myself separate from the people who had hurt me. Or I could try to let go. I could try to forgive. I'll try, I said. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. My mother hugged me, and I let her. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't a magical fix for everything that had gone wrong. But it was a start. When I got back to the car, Sam looked at me with questioning eyes. How'd it go? She told me she was the one who made sure I got the inheritance, I said. She transferred Mark's money into my trust. She did it behind everyone's back.
Whoa, Sam said.
That's huge. Why didn't she tell you before? She was ashamed, I said. She was ashamed of how she'd failed me. And she was afraid I wouldn't forgive her. Would you have forgiven her? I mean, I thought about it. Maybe. Eventually. I don't know. But I think I'm ready to try. Sam smiled and reached over to squeeze my hand. That's good, Charlie. That's really good. We drove back to the house, and I spent the rest of the evening thinking about everything my mother had told me. She'd been trying to help me all along, even when she couldn't show it. She'd been working in the shadows, moving pieces around, making sure I had what I needed even if she couldn't give it to me openly. The next day, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Charlotte, he said. Your mother told me what she did. About the trust. Are you angry? He paused. I'm not sure what I am. I'm angry that she kept it from me. I'm angry that she made a unilateral decision without consulting me. But I'm also proud of her. For standing up for you. Dad, I don't want you to be angry with her. She did what she thought was right. I know, he said. And I think she was right. I think she made the right call. I just wish I'd had the courage to do it myself.
You didn't know, I said.
None of us knew. It doesn't make it right, he said. I let Mark run the household. I let him make decisions that weren't his to make. And I let you suffer for it. Dad, I've already forgiven Mom. I'm not going to hold this against you too. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. But I'll take it. I'll take it and try to be better. I hung up the phone and sat in my living room, looking out at the backyard where I'd played as a child. The house was quiet and peaceful, filled with the ghosts of a past that no longer haunted me. I started thinking about what I wanted for my future. I had money. I had a house. I had a partner who loved me. And now, maybe, I had a family I could start rebuilding. It wasn't going to be easy. There were still years of hurt to work through. There were still conversations that needed to be had, boundaries that needed to be set. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I called Mark a few days later. He answered on the second ring, and his voice was cautious, uncertain. Charlotte. Yeah, I said. I wanted to check in. See how you're doing. I'm doing better, he said. The arm is healing. The ribs are still a little sore. But I'm getting there. That's good, I said. I'm glad.
Listen, he said.
I know I've said this before, but I'm really sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I did. I was a terrible brother, and I've had a lot of time to think about it in the hospital. I know, I said. I've had time to think about it too. And I've decided that I'm not going to hold on to the anger anymore. It's too heavy. It's too exhausting. I need to let it go. I don't deserve that, he said. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, I said. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, just the kind of small talk you make when you're trying to find your way back to someone. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't comfortable. But it was something. When I hung up, I felt lighter. I felt like I'd taken another step towards something that looked a lot like peace. Sam came home from work that evening and found me in the kitchen, cooking dinner for the first time in weeks. She leaned against the counter and watched me with a smile on her face. You seem happier, she said. I am, I said. I think I'm finally starting to heal. That's good, she said. That's really good. We ate dinner together, talking and laughing like we used to. And for a little while, everything felt right, and I knew there would be setbacks. I knew there would be moments when the anger came back, when the hurt surged up and threatened to drown me. But I also knew that I was stronger now. Stronger than I'd ever been. And that was enough. The text message came while I was kneading dough for the bakery's morning batch, and I almost ignored it because my hands were covered in flour and the timer was ticking. But something made me wipe my fingers and pick up the phone, and when I saw Mark's name on the screen, my stomach tightened. Can you come to the house? Jessica found something in my office. Something I never told you about. Please come. I texted back. What kind of something? His response came 3 minutes later. Another document. From Grandma's lawyer. Please, Charlotte. Just come. I told my assistant I had to leave and drove to my parents' house with a knot in my chest that I couldn't untie. The drive took 20 minutes, and I spent every second of it trying to imagine what Mark could have hidden that was worse than everything he'd already confessed. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw that the front door was open. My mother was standing in the doorway, her face tight and pale, and my father was behind her, his hand on her shoulder. Neither of them said anything as I walked up the steps and into the house. Mark was in the living room, sitting on the couch with a manila folder in his lap. Jessica was beside him, her hand on his good arm, and when she looked at me, there was something in her eyes that I'd never seen before.
Guilt.
Real, honest guilt. "What's going on?" I asked. Mark held out the folder. "I found this in my office, in a box of stuff I'd forgotten about. It's a copy of Grandma's original will." I took the folder and opened it. The document was old, yellowed at the edges, typed on paper that felt fragile between my fingers. I scanned the first page, then the second, and by the time I got to the third, my hands were shaking. "What does it say?" my mother asked, and I looked up at her, then at Mark. "It says that Grandma's estate was supposed to be split equally between me and Mark. 50-50. No conditions. No trust. Just a straight division." Mark's face was ashen. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I only found this today when I was cleaning out my office." "But we saw the other will," I said. "The one that left everything to me. Mom confirmed it. The lawyer confirmed it." "I don't know how this is possible," my mother said. "Your grandmother's lawyer handled everything. He told me the will was clear." I looked back at the document in my hands. It was signed and dated, with my grandmother's shaky signature at the bottom. Witnessed by two people I didn't recognize. "Someone changed it," I said. "Someone altered the will after Grandma died." "Who would do that?" Jessica asked. I looked at Mark, who had access to her office, who was cleaning it out after she died. Mark's face went white. "I did. I was cleaning it out. But I didn't change anything. I found some papers, and I gave them to Mom." "What papers?" I asked. "I don't remember," Mark said. "I didn't look at them closely. I just grabbed a box and handed it over." "I never got any box," my mother said. "Mark, you never gave me any box." "Yes, I did," Mark said. "I brought it to you the day after the funeral. I put it on the kitchen table. I remember because you were making dinner, and you told me to put it in the office." My mother shook her head. "I don't remember that. I don't remember any box." We all looked at each other, and I felt the pieces starting to fall into place. Someone had intercepted that box. Someone had taken the original will and replaced it with a forged version that gave everything to me. "But who and why?" "Grandma's lawyer," I said. "He told me the will was clear. He told me the trust was set up for me. He was the one who managed everything. If anyone had access to the documents, it was him." "But why would he do that?" my father asked. "What would he have to gain?" I thought about it. I thought about all the times I'd talked to Mr. Patterson on the phone. All the conversations we'd had about the estate, the money, the house. He'd always been helpful. Always been supportive. But I'd never actually met him in person. I'd never seen the original documents until now. "I need to go see him," I said. "I need to talk to him face to face." "I'll come with you," Mark said. "No," I said. "I need to do this alone." I left the house and drove to Mr. Patterson's office, a small storefront in a strip mall that I'd passed 100 times without ever noticing. The sign on the door said, "Patterson and Associates, Estate Planning," in faded gold letters, and when I walked in, the bell above the door jingled like something out of an old movie. Mr. Patterson was sitting behind a cluttered desk, his glasses perched on his nose, his fingers tapping at a keyboard that looked older than me. When he saw me, he smiled, but there was something guarded in his eyes.
"Charlotte," he said.
"This is a surprise. I wasn't expecting you. I need to talk to you about my grandmother's will," I said. "I found a document, an original copy. It says the estate was supposed to be split evenly between me and Mark." Mr. Patterson's smile faltered. "That's impossible. The will was very clear. Everything was left to you." "Then why does this document exist?" I asked, pulling the folder out of my bag. "Why does it have my grandmother's signature and the date and witnesses?" Mr. Patterson stared at the document. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Where did you get this?" Mark found it in his office, in a box he thought he'd given to my mother. Mr. Patterson took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I was afraid this would happen. I was always afraid someone would find it.
What are you talking about? I asked.
What did you do, Mr. Patterson looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes that looked like shame. Your grandmother came to me a month before she died. She'd changed her mind about the will. She wanted to split everything equally between you and Mark. She said she'd been unfair. She said she'd been acting out of hurt and anger, and she wanted to make things right. But the will I saw left everything to me, I said. The trust, the house, everything. That's because I changed it back, Mr. Patterson said. After your grandmother died, I changed the will back to the original version, the one that left everything to you. I felt the room spin around me. You forged a legal document. You altered my grandmother's will. I did it for you, he said. Your grandmother told me about the way Mark treated you, the way your parents favored him. She'd seen it all, and it broke her heart. And when she came to me to change the will, I thought she was making a mistake. I thought she was being manipulated. You had no right, I said. You had absolutely no right to do that. I know, he said. I know I was wrong, but I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was giving you what you deserved. You didn't give me anything, I said. You committed a crime. You betrayed my grandmother's trust. And you made me believe that my family chose me over Mark when none of it was real. It was real to me, Mr. Patterson said. I believed in you, Charlotte. I believed you deserved everything your grandmother wanted to give you. And I still believe that. I stared at him, this man who'd thought he was being my protector, my champion, my secret ally. And all I felt was hollow. I'm going to report this, I said. I'm going to tell the authorities what you did. I know, he said. I knew you would. And I'll accept the consequences. But I want you to know that I don't regret it. I don't regret giving you the life your grandmother wanted you to have. I walked out of the office and sat in my car for a long time. I thought about the money, the house, the trust. Everything I had, everything I'd built, had been built on a lie. A well-intentioned lie, but a lie nonetheless. I drove back to my parents' house and told them everything. Mr. Patterson's confession, the forged will, the truth about my grandmother's final wishes. Mark sat in silence for a long time after I finished. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. So she did love me. In the end, she did love me. She loved both of us, I said. She just didn't know how to show it. Are you going to fight this? My father asked. Are you going to try to keep the money? I thought about it. I thought about all the things the money had given me. The house, the business, the freedom. And I thought about what I'd do if it all disappeared. I don't know, I said. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I knew one thing. Whatever I decided, it was going to be my decision. Not my grandmother's. Not Mr. Patterson's. Not Mark's, mine. I drove home that night with the weight of everything pressing down on my shoulders. Sam was waiting for me when I got there, and I told her everything. Wow, she said. That's a lot. Yeah, I said. That's one word for it. What are you going to do? I looked at her, this woman who had been my anchor through everything. I'm going to do the right thing. Even if it hurts. Even if it means losing everything. Are you sure? No, I said. But I know what my grandmother would want. And I know what I want. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and know that I did what was right. And that night, lying in bed with Sam's arms around me, I made a decision. I was going to split the money with Mark. 50-50. Just like my grandmother had wanted it, not because I owed him anything. Not because he deserved it. But because it was the right thing to do. Because I was done being defined by money and power and revenge. Because I wanted to be free. The next morning, I called Mark and told him my decision. He was silent for a long time. I don't know what to say, he said. You don't have to say anything, I said. Just take the money. Use it to do something good. For yourself. For Jessica. For whatever comes next. Charlotte, I said. Just don't. We can figure out the details with the lawyer. But this is my decision. And it's final. I hung up the phone and felt the weight lift off my shoulders. I'd done the right thing. The hard thing. The thing my grandmother would have wanted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. Mark showed up at my house 3 days later, unannounced, with a folder tucked under his good arm and a look on his face that I couldn't quite read. Sam was at work and I was alone, kneading dough in the kitchen for a special order that had come in the night before. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, flour still dusting my hands, I felt my guard go up. "Charlotte," he said, "I need to talk to you." "About what? The money? The split?" "I've been thinking about it and I can't take it."
I stared at him.
"What do you mean you can't take it?" "I mean I don't deserve it," he said. "I've spent my whole life taking from you. Taking your room, taking your place in the family, taking your peace of mind. And now you're offering me money you don't have to give, and I can't accept it." "Mark, I made this decision. It's mine to make." "I know," he said. "And I appreciate it. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. But I can't take it. It would feel like I was stealing from you all over again." He walked past me into the living room and sat down on the couch. I followed him, wiping my hands on my apron, trying to figure out what was really going on. "Is this Jessica's idea?" I asked. "Is she telling you not to take it?" "No," he said. "This is my idea. And actually, Jessica agrees with me. She says we don't need the money. We have our own jobs, our own savings. We'll be fine. But this money could change your life. It could give you and Jessica a fresh start." Mark looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "I don't want a fresh start. I want to earn my own way. I want to prove to you and to Mom and Dad and to myself that I can be a better person. And I can't do that if I'm taking handouts from the sister I betrayed." I sat down across from him. "So, what are you saying? You want me to keep all the money?" "I want you to keep what's yours," he said. "I want you to use it to build the life you deserve. And I want you to know that I'll never ask you for anything again." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them back. "Mark, I don't know what to say." "Say you forgive me," he said. "Say you'll give me a chance to be your brother again. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted." I sat there for a long moment, looking at my brother. He was still the same person who had let them kick me out. He was still the same person who had broken my computer and let Jessica redecorate my room. But he was also the person who had almost died in a car accident. The person who had confessed his sins in a hospital bed. The person who was standing in front of me now, asking for nothing but forgiveness. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said. "Not completely.
Not yet.
But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to start over." Mark nodded. "That's enough. That's more than I deserve." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between us. Finally, Mark stood up and walked to the door. "I'm going to be better," he said. "I'm going to be the brother you deserved all along." "Mark," I said. "Thank you." He turned back and looked at me. "For what?" "For giving me a reason to believe in you again." He left, and I stood in my kitchen with the flour still on my hands and the feeling of something that might have been hope settling in my chest. A few weeks later, my mother invited me to dinner. Just me and her, no Mark, no Jessica, no Dad. She said she wanted to talk, just the two of us. I agreed, though I wasn't sure what to expect. She'd made my favorite meal, the one she used to make on my birthday. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, with green beans on the side. She'd set the table with the good china, the stuff she only brought out for special occasions. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this." I said. "I wanted to," she said. "I wanted to do something nice for you. Just once." We ate dinner together, and it was almost normal. We talked about the bakery, about Sam, about the house I was still renovating. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about Mark. We just talked like two people who were trying to find their way back to each other. After dinner, she poured us both a glass of wine and sat me down on the couch. "Charlotte," she said, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the person you've become, despite everything you went through. You're strong and you're kind, and you're everything I ever hoped you'd be." "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." "I know I haven't been the mother you deserved," she continued. "I've made so many mistakes. I've let my fear of conflict and my need to keep the peace get in the way of being there for you. And I'm so sorry. Mom, we've already talked about this. I've forgiven you. I know, she said. But I needed to say it again. I needed you to hear it. I love you, Charlotte. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it. I hugged her, and I held on for a long time. When I pulled away, she was crying, and so was I. I love you too, Mom. I said that, and I meant it. I really meant it. That the next few months were strange. My relationship with my family slowly started to heal. Mark and Jessica came over for dinner sometimes, and it was awkward at first, but eventually it started to feel more natural. My dad and I started talking more, actually talking about things that mattered, that I even started going to therapy. It was something I'd been putting off for years, but I finally realized that I needed to work through the trauma of everything that had happened. Sam came with me to the first session, holding my hand in the waiting room like she always did. You've got this, she said. I know, I said. I think I do. Therapy was hard. It was harder than I'd expected. I had to talk about things I'd spent years trying to forget. The night I'd been kicked out. The months of being pushed aside. The feeling of being invisible in my own home. But it was also healing. Slowly, painfully, I started to let go of the anger. I started to forgive myself for things I'd blamed myself for. I started to see that I wasn't broken. I'd just been hurt. Sam was there through all of it. She was patient and kind and never pushed me to talk about things I wasn't ready to talk about. She just listened and held my hand and reminded me that I was loved. One night, we were sitting on the porch of my grandmother's house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. The house was finally finished, finally my own. Sam turned to me and smiled. Look at this, she said. Look at everything you've built. You did this, Charlie. All of it.
We did this, I said.
I couldn't have done it without you.
Nah, she said.
You would have figured it out. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I leaned my head on her shoulder. I'm not strong. I'm just too stubborn to give up.
That's the same thing, she said.
That's exactly the same thing. I laughed and she laughed too, and we sat there in the fading light and watched the stars start to come out. The money was still there. The trust was still intact. But I'd started to think about it differently. It wasn't a reward. It wasn't a weapon. It was just a resource, a tool I could use to build the life I wanted. I started making changes. I expanded the bakery, hired more staff, started offering more products. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping people who were in the same position I'd been in. I started living my life with intention, with purpose, with gratitude. And I stopped waiting for my family to apologize. Because I realized that I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their validation. I just needed to be okay with myself. One day, Mark came to the bakery. He stood in the doorway and watched me work, his hands in his pockets, a smile on his face. This is nice, he said. This is really nice. Thanks, I said. It's my baby. I can tell, he said. You're really good at this. I smiled. That means a lot coming from you. He bought a coffee and a pastry and sat down at one of the tables. I joined him during a lull, and we talked about nothing important. Just small talk, the kind of conversation that felt comfortable and easy. Charlotte, he said, I want to tell you something. What? I'm going to be a father. Jessica is pregnant. I felt a jolt of surprise.
Wow.
That's big. Congratulations. Thanks, he said. I'm scared. I'm really scared. I don't want to mess this up like I messed everything else up. You won't, I said. You're different now. You've changed. I want to be different, he said. I want to be a good father, a better brother, a better person. Then you will be, I said. I believe in you. Mark smiled at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time.
Hope.
Thank you, he said. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said. Even you. The phone rang at 6 a.m, and I knew before I answered that something was wrong. My mother's voice was cracked and trembling, the sound of someone who had been crying for hours and couldn't stop. Charlotte, it's your grandmother's house. The house you're living in. There's been a fire. I was out of bed and pulling on clothes before she finished the sentence. Sam was awake beside me, her eyes wide with alarm. What happened? I asked. Is everyone okay? Nobody was hurt, my mother said. But the house, Charlotte. The house is gone. I drove to my grandmother's house with Sam beside me, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was in shock, the kind of shock that made everything feel distant and unreal. When I got there, the street was blocked off by fire trucks. The house that had been my grandmother's, that had been mine, was a smoldering shell of blackened wood and shattered glass. The roof had collapsed. The walls were still standing, but they were charred and weak, and I could see the sky through holes where the second floor used to be. My mother was standing on the sidewalk with my father, her face streaked with tears. Mark was there too, with Jessica, and when they saw me, Mark stepped forward. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry."
"I'm so sorry."
"What happened?" I asked. "How did this happen? The fire department is investigating," my father said. "They think it might have been electrical. Old wiring, faulty outlets. They're not sure yet." I stood there and stared at the ruins of the only real home I'd ever had. Everything I'd built was gone. The renovations, the furniture, the photographs, the letter from my grandmother. All of it reduced to ash and rubble. Sam put her arm around me. "Charlie, I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood there and watched the smoke rise into the gray morning sky. The investigation took 2 weeks. During that time, I stayed with Sam at her apartment, sleeping on the futon that had become a familiar refuge. I went through the motions of life, going to work at the bakery, coming home, eating dinner, but I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the inside of me and left nothing behind. The fire department finally ruled it an electrical fire. Old wiring in the attic, they said. A short circuit that had sparked and spread before anyone could stop it. Accidental.
Impreventable.
A tragic coincidence. But I didn't believe it. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, that I started to notice things. Small things at first. A car that seemed to be following me home from the bakery. A phone call that disconnected as soon as I answered. A note taped to my door that said, "You don't deserve what she gave you," in block letters cut from a magazine. I showed the note to Sam, and her face went pale. "Charlie, you need to go to the police." "I can't prove anything," I said. "It's just a note. It could be anyone. It could be someone who knows about your grandmother's money. Someone who knows you inherited everything. Mark knows. Mom and Dad know. Jessica knows. But they wouldn't do this."
"Are you sure?" Sam asked.
"Are you really sure?" I wasn't sure. I hated that I wasn't sure. I called Mark and told him about the note. He was quiet for a long moment. "Charlotte, you need to be careful. You need to stay with Sam and not go anywhere alone."
"What do you know?" I asked.
"What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing," he said. "I don't know anything. I just have a bad feeling about this." I hung up the phone and sat on Sam's couch, trying to figure out what to do next. The fire had taken almost everything. The money was still there, safe in accounts that had nothing to do with the house. But everything else, the physical reminders of my grandmother's love, the photographs, the letters, the furniture I'd picked out with care and hope, was gone. I started going to therapy more often. I needed to talk through the grief, the anger, the fear. My therapist, a woman named Diane, listened patiently and asked me the questions I didn't want to answer. "Charlotte, do you think someone set the fire?" "I don't know," I said. "I want to say no. I want to believe it was an accident. But there's a part of me that can't stop thinking about it." "Then trust that part of yourself," she said. "Listen to your instincts. They're telling you something important." I decided to hire a private investigator. It was expensive, but I had the money now and I needed answers. I found a man named Ray, through a friend of a friend, a former police detective who'd retired and started his own business. He was gruff and direct, with a voice like gravel and eyes that had seen too much. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning." I told him about the fire, about the note, about the car that had been following me, about the phone calls, about the feeling that I was being watched. Ray listened without interruption, taking notes in a small spiral pad. When I finished, he nodded. "I'll look into it. Stay in contact. Don't do anything reckless." I went home and tried to get back to normal. The bakery was busy, which helped. I had to focus on orders and customers and staff, and that kept my mind off the fire and the note and the fear that was always there, buzzing just under the surface. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I started locking doors I'd never locked before. I started checking windows before I went to bed. I started sleeping with a baseball bat beside my bed, just in case Sam tried to reassure me. Charlie, you're safe. You're here with me, and I won't let anything happen to you.
I know, I said.
I know you won't, but I still feel scared. Then let's talk to the police, she said. Let's file a report about the note, about the car, about everything. We filed a report the next morning. The officer who took it was polite and professional, but I could tell he didn't take it seriously. He probably thought I was a paranoid woman with too much money and too much time on her hands, but I wasn't paranoid. I was right. 3 days later, Ray called me with a name. I found out who owns the car that's been following you. It's registered to a company called Horizon Property Holdings. I did some digging, and Horizon Property Holdings is owned by a single individual, your cousin Gregory. I felt the blood drain from my face. Gregory. My cousin Gregory. The one who'd disappeared years ago after a scandal involving his own inheritance. The one who'd always resented me for being Grandma's favorite. Gregory, I said. I haven't seen him in years. I didn't even know he was still around.
He's around, Ray said.
And he's been watching you. I think he might have been involved in the fire. Why would he do that? I asked. What does he have to gain? He didn't get the money he thought he deserved from your grandmother. And he knows you inherited everything. He might be trying to intimidate you, make you give up the inheritance. But he can't get it, I said. It's in my name. It's protected. People like Gregory aren't always rational, Ray said. He might think he can scare you into giving him what he wants. I hung up the phone and sat on the couch, my mind racing. Gregory. My cousin Gregory. I hadn't thought about him in years. He'd been the black sheep of the family, the one who'd always been in trouble, the one who'd been written out of Grandma's will long before she died, and now he was back. And he was after me. I called Mark and told him what I'd learned. He was silent for a long time. Gregory. I haven't seen him since Grandma's funeral. I thought he was in prison. He was released, I said. And now he's targeting me. Charlotte, you need to be careful. You need to stay somewhere he can't find you. I don't know where to go, I said. I can't just disappear. Yes, you can, Mark said. Come stay with us. At the house. He won't try anything with all of us here. I thought about it. I thought about going back to the house where I'd been kicked out, where I'd been made to feel small and unwanted. And I realized that I was stronger now. Stronger than I'd been before. Stronger than I'd ever been. Okay, I said. I'll come stay with you. Sam drove me to Mark's house that night. My mother and father were already there, along with Jessica, and they all looked relieved to see me. Thank you for coming, my mother said. We were so worried. I'll be fine, I said. I have to be. We sat in the living room, and I told them everything. About Gregory. About the note. About the car. About the fire. We need to go to the police, my father said. We need to tell them everything.
They already know, I said.
I filed a report, but I'm not sure they believe me. Then we'll make them believe you, Mark said. We'll all go in together. We'll tell them what's happening. They'll have to listen. We went to the police station the next day, as a family. My mother, my father,
Mark,
Jessica,
Sam, and me.
We sat in the waiting room for an hour, and then we were called in to talk to a detective. The detective's name was Rivera, and he was sharp and serious, the kind of man who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. He listened to our story without interruption, asking questions only when we paused. This Gregory, he said. What's his full name? Gregory Harrison. I said. Have you had any contact with him before this? No, I said. I haven't seen him since I was a teenager. He was always in trouble. Grandma cut him out of the will years before she died. Detective Rivera nodded. We'll look into it. In the meantime, I want you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Keep your doors locked. Call us if you see anything suspicious. We left the station and I felt a little better. Not completely safe, but better. The next few days were quiet. I stayed at Mark's house, working remotely from the bakery, helping with meals, trying to feel normal. The family was different now.
Kinda.
Gentler. They looked at me with something that felt like love, not obligation, and then, 3 days later, the call came, "Charlotte, it's Detective Rivera. We found your cousin. He's in custody." Custody? What happened? He was caught trying to break into your bakery. We found evidence on him. A can of gasoline. Matches. He was planning to burn it down. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was going to burn down the bakery. It looks like it, the detective said. We're also investigating the fire at your house. We think he might have been involved in that too. What happens now? He'll be charged with arson. Possibly attempted arson. It's going to be a long process. But he won't be able to hurt you anymore. I hung up the phone and told Sam and Mark and Jessica and my parents. They were all relieved, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being violated, of being hunted by someone I'd never wronged. He'll go to prison, Mark said. He can't hurt you anymore. I know, I said. I just wish I could understand why he did it. Some people don't need a reason, my father said. They just want to cause pain. I nodded, but I still didn't understand. I still didn't understand why Gregory had come after me, why he'd tried to take everything away from me, Dad, and I realized that I might never understand. But that was okay, because I didn't need to understand him. I just needed to keep moving forward, to keep building my life, to keep being the person I wanted to be. The money was still there. The bakery was still there. Sam was still there. And I was still there, standing in the rubble of everything that had happened, ready to rebuild. Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done, that I rebuilt. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Gregory sat in the defendant's chair with his head down and his hands cuffed in front of him, and I sat in the gallery with Sam's hand gripping mine so tight I could feel her pulse. He didn't look at me once. Not when the prosecutor described the fire. Not when the note was entered into evidence. Not when the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. 15 years, with the possibility of parole after 10. Gregory's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, citing mental health issues and a troubled past, but the judge wasn't having it. This was not a crime of passion, she said. This was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. You targeted a young woman who had done nothing to you, and you tried to destroy everything she had built. The court will not be lenient. I watched them lead him away in handcuffs, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not pity. Just a quiet sense of closure, the kind that comes when you know you've done everything you could and the rest is out of your hands. After the trial, I went back to the bakery and stood in the kitchen and breathed in the smell of flour and sugar and butter. The place was humming with activity, my staff moving through their routines with practiced efficiency. It was the kind of normal I'd been craving for months, and I let myself soak it in. Sam came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You okay, yeah?" I said. "I think I am." "What do you want to do now?" I thought about it. I thought about everything I'd been through. The rejection, the inheritance, the fire, the trial. And I realized that what I wanted was simple. I wanted to live my life. I wanted to wake up every morning and know that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "I want to start over," I said. "Really start over. Build something new."
Sam smiled.
"That sounds perfect." I sold my grandmother's property. The lot where the house had stood was empty now, a blank space, waiting for something new. I used the money to buy a small building in the city, an old warehouse with high ceilings and big windows and potential. I spent 6 months renovating it, turning the ground floor into a bigger bakery and the upper floors into a home for Sam and me. The day we moved in, my family came to help. Mark carried boxes with his good arm, his cast still on but his spirit bright. Jessica brought food and organized the kitchen like it was her own. My mother decorated the living room with flowers and fresh linens. My father hung pictures and fixed a leaky faucet and didn't say much, but he smiled more than I'd seen him smile in years. When everything was unpacked and the sun was setting, we all sat in the new living room and ate dinner together. It was loud and chaotic and messy, the kind of family gathering I'd never thought I'd have again. Mark stood up to make a toast. "To Charlotte," he said. "The strongest person I know. You've been through more than anyone should have to go through, and you came out the other side better than ever. I'm proud to call you my sister." And I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing person you've always been. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Thanks, Mark. That means a lot.
We love you, my mother said.
We've always loved you. We just didn't always know how to show it. I know, I said. I love you too. After dinner, the family left, and Sam and I sat on the new couch and looked out at the city lights through the big windows. The building had a rooftop terrace, and we went up there with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. It's beautiful up here, Sam said. It really is, I said. I can't believe this is my life now. A year ago, I was sleeping on your futon with nothing but a duffel bag and a broken heart. And now I have all of this. You earned it, Sam said. You earned every single piece of it. I leaned my head on her shoulder and watched the stars come out. Remember that night on the bus when I got kicked out and I didn't know where I was going? I remember, she said. You called me from a payphone because your phone was dead. I was so scared for you. I was scared too, I said. I was scared and angry and heartbroken. And I didn't think I'd ever feel okay again. But you did. I did, I said. Because of you. Because you were there for me when nobody else was. Sam turned to me, her eyes soft in the fading light. Charlie, you would have been okay anyway. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I just helped you see it. I reached out and took her hand. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know that sounds crazy, and I know we haven't been together that long in the grand scheme of things, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Sam's eyes widened. Are you proposing, maybe? I said. What do you think? She laughed, a bright and joyful sound that echoed across the rooftop. I think yes. I think yes 1,000 times over. I didn't have a ring. I hadn't planned any of it, but I leaned in and kissed her, and I knew that this was exactly where I was supposed to be, that we got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony in the bakery, with string lights and wildflowers and the smell of fresh bread in the air. My family was there, all of them, standing in the front row and crying like they were watching their own daughter get married. Mark was my best man. He gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. My mother cried through the whole ceremony. My father walked me down the aisle, his arm trembling under mine. You did it, he whispered. You built something beautiful. With a lot of help, I said. After the ceremony, we had a reception on the rooftop. Sam and I danced under the stars, and I thought about everything that had brought me here. The bus, the sandwich, the safe, the fire, the trial, the forgiveness. It had all been part of the journey. Every painful, heartbreaking moment had led me here, to this rooftop, to this woman, to this life. Are you happy? Sam asked. More than I ever thought I could be, I said. Me too, she said. Me too. The next morning, I woke up in the apartment above the bakery, and I looked at Sam sleeping beside me, and I felt a sense of peace that I'd never known before. I got out of bed and went downstairs to start the day's baking. The sun was rising through the big windows, casting long golden shadows across the floor. I kneaded dough and shaped loaves and watched the bread rise. I thought about my grandmother and her letter. I thought about all the things she'd done for me, even when she wasn't around to see it. And I realized that the greatest gift she'd given me wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It was the belief that I was worth loving. The belief that I could build something beautiful out of the rubble. That I put the bread in the oven and set the timer. The smell of baking filled the air, warm and comforting and familiar. Sam came downstairs in her pajamas, her hair a mess, and her eyes still half closed. It smells amazing. I'm making your favorite, I said. The cinnamon raisin bread. You're the best wife ever, she said, wrapping her arms around me. I know, I said. I try. We stood there in the kitchen, the two of us, surrounded by flour and sugar and the promise of another day. And I thought about the night I'd been kicked out, the bus ride, the sandwich my mother had made me. I thought about how far I'd come, how much I'd survived, how much I'd built. And I smiled because I was home. Finally, truly, completely home.